right, shalom, shalom. Blessings to all of the righteous. I'm bringing this video out because I wanted to talk about why I was kicked out of Straitway Praise Land. What happened? What was the judgment? And so I'm going to be going over this document that I received about the document, or about the judgment on why I was kicked out. All right? So let's just go through it right away here. It says, Shalom, Brother Jordan. This letter serves as the formal notice of your removal from the community of Straitway Praise Land. After careful counsel, judgment, and confirmation from leadership, including Pastor Dow, it has been determined that your actions have violated the spiritual order, peace, and structure of this community. Among these matters brought forth, you directly disrespected and rejected the authority set in this community by refusing to surrender your weapon when commanded and refusing to leave when instructed by the head of the community. Okay, so that's the first point. Let's just go through that and let's just break that down. Okay, so he said, I directly disrespected and rejected the authority set in the community by refusing to surrender your weapon when commanded and refusing to leave when instructed by the head of the community. Okay. It's sad. To give you some context of this, about a couple weeks before I had gotten kicked out, me and Elder Kabir, we were having a conversation in the mezzanine. We were talking about the covenant document, the covenant agreement that he forced everybody to sign. Now, within that, it talks about how all your property, assets, and future assets are owned and controlled by the foundation, which essentially is Kabir, because he's the one who's controlling the foundation. And I had asked him, what is the difference between me and a Hebrew slave? I said, what rights or privileges do I have that a slave does not have? And the only thing he could come up with was the fact that I could leave. Okay, so while I'm staying there, I'm still going to be treated like a slave. And what do I mean by that? Slaves do not have rights, they have privileges. And that's what I was trying to explain to him. I said, everything that I have in my room, you could take away at any point in time and point to the covenant and say that, well, it's community property, you don't own it. And he had told me that he would not do that. He would not use the covenant in that way. And he even talked about my firearm, which is a shotgun. And I said, well, you could just take it away. You have the right to do that. And he said that he would not use the covenant in order to take away that weapon. So fast forward a couple weeks later, you guys have probably seen the other video that I had where I explained when Elijah punched me in the face. Later that night, it's about 12 o'clock at night when we have a meeting after the brothers get home from work. And we have a meeting from 12 o'clock until about 3:30 in the morning. Now, in the midst of this conversation, as we're talking about why Elijah punched me in the face, after the conversation goes, Kabir says that he wants me to give up the shotgun that I have in my room. And I refused. I said, I have a right as a man to be able to protect me and my family. I was just assaulted by a brother who lives here, and I feel like for my safety and the safety of my family that we need to be able to protect ourselves. And so I'm not going to give up the gun. You said yourself that you would never take it away from me. And then he said, well, if you're not going to give it up, then you're going to, we're going to put you into this apartment that they had. I said, well, I do not want to leave either. I've lived there for 7 years as my family, right? I want to stay in the place where I live. I've lived there for a long time. Why would I want to just all of a sudden up and go because you feel afraid and you want to take my firearm that I have to protect myself? It's ridiculous. So then what he does is he calls Pastor Dow. Somehow Pastor Dow already knew about what happened, even though we were sitting there talking about what's all going on. Pastor Dow was already given a narrative. And so he just tells me I need to go to that apartment. So that's what I do. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm grabbing me, my 2 children, a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old, and my wife, and we're being brought to, it's not even really an apartment, it's a basement of like a 4-plex. And there's like a kitchen there. It was nasty. I mean, there's spiders everywhere. I had to have my wife clean it for the first couple of days that we were even there. It was just a nasty place. So we're sitting down there waiting to hear what's going to happen. And it's not for a whole nother week until I'm called to Praiseland, and then this judgment comes forth. Never had a hearing. Wasn't brought before the whole assembly that I know of. I mean, everybody's minds have already been evilly affected by Kabir, the way that he had been slandering me and talking bad about me for weeks on weeks prior to this event. So it wouldn't have mattered if we had brought before that whole assembly anyways. Everybody's mind was already swayed to me. What I really needed to do was get brought up the chain, and I was hoping to be able to sit before Pastor Dow and the other elders so we could actually get a handle on this situation, because I thought it was getting way too out of hand. And Kabir was overstretching his authority way beyond what I think an elder should ever be able to do. But let's keep going on the document. You openly cursed and reviled a fellow brother in front of witnesses, using language that sows discord and dishonor among the saints. Reference Exodus chapter 22, verse 28, and Titus chapter 3, verse 10. Okay. This is crazy. So that night, when we're talking about when Elijah had punched me in the face, and we're going over what had happened, I'm telling my account of what had happened. At the end of me telling my account of what had happened, I said, and then this N-word decides he's going to punch me in the face, right? I didn't use that word beforehand. That's not the reason why he punched me. This was hours upon hours after the event had already happened. And I'm recounting the event, being upset, really, that the fact that a brother would even do that when I'm not even the one that's talking to you, because you're offended for some other stuff that I said to you earlier that day. What I want to understand is if using the N-word is a curse. That's what the judgment says. Openly cursed. How is using the N-word a curse? And if it is, I expect every single Hebrew that is a part of Straitway to never use that word again. White, black, Mexican, don't matter. You shouldn't be using that word either. Because if this is case law, there's one law for the stranger, one law for the homeborn. If it's a curse, you shouldn't be saying it either. But how many white brothers say that at Praiseland? It's almost like a week doesn't go by without me hearing a white brother say that word. Now, I normally don't say that word. I normally don't. But when I do say it, it's because of the fact of I'm already upset at the fact that this brother isn't acting like a brother anymore. He's acting like the connotation that that word means. That's why I used it. He's going to punch me with his fists. I use my words. Who's a mature one in the situation? Answer me that. Now to continue. You expressed intent to involve civil authorities, threatening to call the police on the assembly, which contradicts the instructions of Paul to settle disputes within the body. Now that's crazy to me. When Elijah had punched me in the face, and arguments and words are being thrown back and forth, I literally was reaching into my phone, or in my pocket to grab my phone, and Elijah's like, he's reaching, what are you reaching for? And I'm screaming, I'm grabbing my phone, I'm grabbing my phone, I'm grabbing my phone, and pulled out my phone. And I said, I'm going to call the police. That's what I told him, to get him away from me, right? Did I call the police? Nope. I called Elder Kabir, didn't get an answer. Called Deacon. Then later, Kabir calls me, and you think that he's worried about my well-being. You think, like, are you okay? What happened? No, the first thing that he's asking, did you call the police? Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Next point. You have consistently demonstrated rebellion by rejecting the chain of command instituted by Yah, including Pastor Dow's direction and the delegated authority of the community head. I don't know where that's coming from. When Pastor Dow told me to go in that apartment, I went right into that apartment. I didn't question what he had to say at all. I literally asked, if I do give up my gun, can I stay in the place? And he said, no, you need to go to that apartment. I said, okay, yes, sir. That's what I said. So I don't know how I'm disregarding what Pastor Dow has set up. Now when he says, consistently demonstrated rebellion by rejecting the chain of command instituted by Yah. I want to know how. Because what Kabir has said in front of the whole assembly, you can ask the other brothers, is that I will obey him. Why did I get arrested, me and Ryan, when we ended up in jail? Because we brought those guns to that school thing? Because Kabir told me not to leave, even when the cops showed up? and I obeyed him, going straight to jail for that shit. I've obeyed Kabir in everything that he's ever commanded me to do. That's why I'll ask him, I don't really want to do this, but if you command me, I'll do it. And that turned into a whole joke when people are mocking it. Well, if you command me, I'll do it. Yeah, if you command me to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to obey those who have the rule over me. But if you're making a suggestion, that gives me the option. I can only think of those 2 times where I've disobeyed Kabir at the end of that. Refusing to give up my gun and refusing to leave the place where I have been for 7 years. You know the world doesn't even do that. They won't even kick you out at 3 o'clock in the morning. They'll at least give you some sort of notice. 15-day, 30-day notice. But it's just, boom, kick you right out. Put you in the basement, 3 o'clock in the morning. Who cares? But for what sin? That's what's crazy to me. Last one. You undermined the structure put in place for royal interiors, stirring confusion and division among brothers who looked to you as an example. Now, to that one I find completely ridiculous. Because out of Kabir's own mouth, he said he was intentionally causing confusion within the business. So if he's judging me for that, if that's on the judgment for me, then where's the judgment for him? Because he confessed it with his own mouth. I have it on recording. I can put it up on the video too, if you need me to, if you guys need to hear it. Let me continue. While this decision is final regarding your position in this community, it is not made out of personal hatred or vengeance. We pray you will reflect, repent, and seek reconciliation with the Most High Yah. You are no longer welcome on this land or within any straitway community unless there is direct intervention and restoration approved by Pastor Dow and the elders. This part's crazy too. To your woman, Sister Maya, though this judgment involves your master's household, I want to acknowledge you separately. I pray you continue to walk as a true daughter of Zion. May you win your husband without a word by your chaste behavior and reverence. You have been deeply loved in this ministry, and it brings sorrow to witness this outcome. You're still called to honor your husband and serve Yah faithfully in spirit and truth. With sincerity and sorrow, Elder Kabir, Straitway Praise Land. To me, directly addressing my wife, to me that was crazy. And why I think it was crazy is because it was probably a week, maybe 2 weeks before this whole event had happened. That Kabir was calling me every name under the sun, but he specifically made mention to call me Nabal. And he always refers to himself as David. And I had to have a serious talk with my wife and explain to her, do you know what this man is insinuating right now by what he's saying? He's calling me Nabal. He's always referred to himself as David. And then what? Does that make you Abigail? See, the thing is this ministry has caused women to leave their husbands, or has tried to, for the sake of the ministry. It was funny because after that meeting where Kabir called me Nabal, then it was like almost every day Kabir would say something random to my wife. He'd be asking her weird questions that have nothing to do with the community whatsoever at all. I know the one time he asked her, he says, wow, like your son has really beautiful eyes. Like, let me look at your eyes, see if they're the same color. Now, to many of you, that seems pretty harmless, right? But me knowing Kabir, he's had it where the sisters are not allowed to look brothers in the eye. When me and my wife were first talking, she wasn't allowed to look me in the eye because he believes it's a window to the soul and that a connection is going to be established there. So my question is why are you asking to look in my wife's eyes? Like that, to me, that's suspicious. That's suspect. Now, I didn't say nothing. I was this close to saying, you know what, and addressing Kabir and saying, if you got anything to say to my wife, you need to run it by me. The only things that you should ever say to her is something that has to do directly with the community need at that time. And there's not time for you to run it by me. It's sad for me to talk about this. But in another way, I'm grateful because of the fact that it was probably 3-4 weeks maybe before all this really went down the way that it did. I was praying to the Most High and I was saying, Father, if your spirit is not at this community with these people that is here, I said, I am not going to leave these people of my own accord. I said, if you need me to be somewhere else, if your spirit is somewhere else, I want to be where you and your spirit is. You're going to have me get kicked out for BS reasons. That's what I prayed. And that's exactly what ended up happening. The reasons why I had gotten excommunicated, these things are completely bullshit. Completely bullshit. Like reading it, I don't even know how you would like classify any of these things as like a sin worthy of death or like a fact that like we need to get this guy out of here. But I do know the real reason why you wanted me to leave. I do know that. Because I had a problem with the covenant agreement. And I was the one person who was actually saying something about it. I was the one person who actually seen it for what it really is. And it's a slave contract, making everybody who lives there a slave to you. I'm glad I've signed that under duress. Proven duress. You can't say that there's going to be consequences if you don't sign a voluntary document that makes somebody's life hard for a week, and then they finally sign it, and you say that that wasn't under coercion or duress. That directly meets the definition. What I find crazy about this whole judgment thing is Kabir had sent my father-in-law, so my wife's parents, this judgment. They got 2 documents. I got 1. This is the only one that I got. They got 2. And they were sent that the morning of the judgment. I went there at 7 o'clock. That's when I had heard it. 7:30 at night. They heard it that morning. He had sent it to them that morning. And then when a GoFundMe page had been made for me, then he ends up texting my father-in-law again saying, look at this GoFundMe page. I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging for bread. My seeds are not begging for bread. And the righteous, I have not been forsaken. And I'm not begging for bread. It's because people want to help somebody out in a situation, a bad situation, where you've contributed to something for 7 years and left with nothing. Even though you said, Kabir, once I give back my phone, said you would give me $1,200, yet you only sent $850. You're a liar. A straight up liar. Oh, man. I'm lost for words at this point. Honestly, I hope this video helps. And it's not like a super great choreographed video or like super entertaining, but I just wanted to put it out there so that way you all could see it. I'm surprised that there was I couldn't even appeal to authority. That's what was crazy to me. It was just like, no, this is what the judgment is. Grab your stuff. You're out. That's why when you people are getting on me about the videos that I've been posting lately, it's just like, I'm literally just posting truth up there. You probably think, well, it's going to hurt families. It's like, well, these families didn't care if my family got hurt. You know, where was the Daniel standing up for Susanna in this situation? So if you're in agreement with it, silence is consent. If you're not saying anything or not standing up for it, then you're in agreement with the judgment. I mean, if the judgment's wicked, it makes you wicked too. Anyways. There's something else I was going to say, but I kind of forgot it. Anyways, hopefully that helps somebody. Bless y'all.